If you're a fan of horror stories, then don't forget to check out my second channel, Kaiser the Storyteller, where I upload a new horror story every single Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Every story is written, voiced, and produced by me, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Link is in the description down below. Apologies, today's video was supposed to be the great info perk discussion, but it's gonna take me a few more days. It's incredibly long video. But today I was scrolling Twitter and I came across an interesting set of posts. Now, I don't know if I want to show the tweets because my videos do tend to get multi-thousand views. Granted, they don't really hit the double digits that often, but they do tend to get anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000 views. And I don't want anyone to like directly go after this person. So I'm not going to show you guys the tweets, but I am going to read you kind of the thread that led to what I want to talk about today. So Twitter user said, if you have less than 500 hours in DBD, please stop posting your dog shit opinion on Twitter so I don't have to make fun of you. Thank you. Now, that's kind of funny. It got a chuckle out of me the first time I read it. I'm also not a big fan of it. At the same time, like, it's obviously a joke, right? It's obviously just a joke at the expense of inexperienced people trying to talk on a game they know nothing about. But at the same time, I think that your hours of playtime, while they are a great indicator of how good you can be at a game, also are not the tell-all. I've seen people with 5,000 hours have way worse takes than people with fucking 200 hours, right? Just because, like, it all really depends on how much you're focused on the game, how much you're dedicated to the game. Like, I've had people, and I'm trying not to humble here, but I've had people tell me that at 1,200 hours, I have more experience and more nuance about the game than other people they've seen at 5,000 hours or whatever. The point is that hours do not necessarily equate to knowledge, but I can understand where people are coming from that. The quote tweet of this says, "This game takes little to no skill to be good at." Somebody replied to them, "You are so delusional, it's hilarious." And I agree. I think that people saying that Dead by Daylight takes no skill are people who just unironically just do not understand the game from a fundamental perspective. The person replies, and this is what made me want to, like, I opened my OBS just to hit record so I could fucking talk about this. The person replies, "Y'all got a fetish for gatekeeping in this community. It's hilarious." I don't think anybody's gatekeeping you by telling you that the game takes skill. Like, I have no idea where that came from. Then they did the laughing, crying emoji, and they said, "Stop acting like doing a gen, unhooking, chasing, nor healing is hard. It's not, get over yourselves. DBD isn't hard. The player base, solo queue mainly, just doesn't use game sense." Now, I'm not going to read you everything, but the person then quote tweeted, they watched a 1-hour VOD of the person who originally said Dead by Daylight doesn't take skill, and they broke down fundamentally every single mistake this person made in 1 hour. And it was insane. It was like things like they didn't look around, they zigzagged too much, they had bad positioning, they didn't know how to play against certain killers, they gave killers free hits, free pressures, they didn't play buildings correctly, they went to the edges of map for some reason, like a whole bunch of stuff. And then they made the assumption that this person was only at like 400 hours maybe. And apparently this person has 1.5 thousand hours on console and 200 on Epic Games. After reading these mistakes and going watch the VOD myself, it's amazing to me this person has over 1,500 hours. So that is the lead in to what led me to want to talk about this. Does Dead by Daylight take skill? Now, obviously, you can tell from my attitude, I hope, that yes, Dead by Daylight does take skill. It takes a lot of skill. It's a very difficult game. And the reason for that is because Dead by Daylight is not necessarily a mechanics game, although some of the top players are very mechanically skilled. Like, obviously, if you're taking someone like Deathslinger and Huntress and Trickster and stuff like that, there's a lot of mechanics with the aiming. If you got somebody who moves really well, like Blight, Spirit, Wesker, Nurse, you know, stuff like that. You have killers that move very fast. That takes skills. But there's another level of skill to Dead by Daylight, and that is knowledge, the skill of using the knowledge of how to play the game. Now, I've spoken before about how knowledge is only as good as the player that owns it. And that's what I'm talking about here, is that the skill to use game knowledge and game experience is incredibly powerful. But the biggest skill in Dead by Daylight is understanding what you're supposed to be doing at any given time. I started a series that I still haven't done the second episode for, called Kaiser's Declassified DBD Survivor Guide, where I tell you that instead of teaching you how to loop properly or how to do certain techs or things like that, I just wanted to teach a general game sense, because that is part of the skill of Dead by Daylight. And it's something that you recognize very, very often whenever you're playing, whether or not you're playing against a killer or you're playing solo queue. Something I've noticed a lot of times is just how terrible some people are. Dead by Daylight takes a lot of skill and a lot of know-how, because on the surface, it's just a game of cat and mouse. But below that, it is a game of strategy. It is a game of decision making. It is a game of making or of not making mistakes and punishing other people's mistakes. Everything that you do in Dead by Daylight, every single action you take has an impact on the match. Even something as simple as moving too wide on a loop instead of taking the loop a little bit sharper. One thing that you'll notice some Survivor players do, for example, is they will like hug a loop, and you see this like really weird lean happen when they're doing it. What they're basically doing is they're holding their W and A key so that they're tightening their hold on the loop so they can cut the corners a little bit sharper. And that helps a lot, especially because of the fact that the killers have a bigger hitbox. So killers have to understand how to hug loops without getting stuck on random crap, because their bigger hitbox will hurt them. On top of that, there's a lot of skill that goes into every single one of the killers in this game. There's like every single killer has their own skill cap, their own skill floor, their own skill ceiling. But this person specifically seems to only be talking about survivors, because they mention doing a gen, unhooking, they say chasing, but then they say healing. So like they didn't really mention any killer skills. I think the chasing is referring to being like taking chase as you're a survivor. And so it got me thinking about this. Are they saying survivors are skillless? And then that makes me wonder, are they a killer main? But I did watch the VOD. They played Survivor. So the question is, are you a survivor with little skill who thinks that Survivor takes no skill? So it got me, I'm confused. I'm a little bit confused. So let's just go down the list. Doing a gen. Does doing a gen take skill? Absolutely it does. You need to know how long a generator takes. You need to know when to commit to the gen and when not to commit to the gen. Granted, doing a gen is very boring and skill checks are not that difficult unless you're like me and you like trying to go for great skill checks, in which case I tend to miss some skill checks. But the point is that doing a gen does take skill, because you need to understand when to commit and when not to commit. You need to understand what gens are smart to do, which gens are safe and which ones are unsafe. You need to understand how to not 3-gen yourself so that you give the killer an easy match. You also need to understand gen placement and all things like that. So yeah, I'd say doing a gen takes skill. What was next? Unhooking. Unhooking is another one. What side do you unhook for? When do you go for the unhook? Do you heal underneath the hook whenever you've got them off, or do you let them run to a safer place? That takes skill. It takes a lot of skill to understand when you have to go unhook. See, this is the problem, is that they're equating these actions to skill level. They're equating like holding M1 to skill level, but that's not what the skill of Dead by Daylight is. They say chasing. Now that one, especially if you're talking about from the survivor side, that's a really big skill gap. There's a dude on here on YouTube, Mr. Taterhead, I think his name is, who does multi-hour long breakdowns about how to properly run every single loop. And that's incredibly important. That's an incredibly important skill to have. Looping in and of itself is a very big skill issue, and it's something that I see all the time on what separates the good players from the bad players. You know, it's one of those things where I just really don't believe that people fully understand how intricate looping is, because every single loop has its own way to run it from both sides of the equation. Both sides need to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are at each loop. And then they said healing. And like I said, healing is something that you need to know when to heal, how to heal, who to heal against. I've seen people try to heal against Legion, and you don't do that. It's a waste of time, right? I've seen people try to not heal against someone like Blight. Like, sir, you need to heal. You know what I mean? You also can like recognize not just who the killer is, but like how the killer is playing, right? Like if you got somebody who's doing a hit and run style, then maybe healing isn't the best bet, right? Healing's not a good counter to hit and run because they're just going to injure you and walk off again. Very similar to Legion, right? But maybe you also have somebody who's not good at chases, right? Maybe they got like one lucky hit on you. Then it's like, we can heal me in a little bit. Let's finish this gen first, something like that, right? It's all about situational awareness, which from reading and seeing all of the mistakes this person did, they don't have very good situational awareness. And it makes me wonder, for even a slight second, like what it is in this person's mind that is gatekeepy about saying this game takes skill. But I think what they're talking about is that they think that it's gatekeepy to say that somebody who's inexperienced shouldn't give their balancing opinions. And you know what? I agree. They should absolutely be able to give their balancing opinions. However, if you don't have that much experience in the game, and if you only play one side, if you only play one side, I'm just not going to take your opinions as seriously. Somebody who just started the game yesterday and has only played Killer is just simply not going to be providing a valid input onto how the game works. They might get it right some of the time, but this isn't just Dead by Daylight. It's just the nature of ever-changing competitive games, right? Like Overwatch, for example. I have well over 2,500 hours in Overwatch, right? Or 2,500 hours in Overwatch. I was a coach for a very long time. I put a lot of time and energy and effort into Overwatch, so I know a lot about it, or I used to. I don't know about as much about it anymore because I don't play Overwatch 2 and I don't keep up with everything that much. But I used to know a lot about it, and having people come in who just started playing the game 2 months ago try to tell me that I'm wrong about the strength of characters was hilarious. Apex Legends was the same way. I left that game with over 6,000 hours in it. I played that game religiously. You think that somebody who had 200 hours in it was going to tell me why something was broken or not broken? Fuck off. But the thing is, too, is that, again, I understand that people can have less hours than you and still have more knowledge depending on how much they put forward. However, if someone gives a bad opinion and then we come back and we learn that, like, okay, let's put it this way. I had somebody tell me one day that Nurse isn't that strong. She's not that strong at all. And then I learned that this person only had 300 hours in the game. And they were a survivor main. I'm just not I'm not going to argue with you at that point. I'm not going to. You've never played Nurse before. You told me that you barely play against nurses, which makes sense because your MMR is probably low, and a lot of low MMR killers don't really play Nurse. So the nurses you do go against are probably dog shit. So of course you don't think Nurse. They were like, I get 4-man outs against Nurse all the time. Well, yeah, the nurses you're playing might as well be playing with their monitor off. You know, so it's just like, and it's like, and I think that like maybe some people might look at me and saying that Dead by Daylight takes a lot of skill, and they might think that maybe I'm like offended or something, like, oh my God, dude, how can you get so mad because they say it doesn't take a lot of skill? And it's like, because it's just objectively wrong. It's just an objectively wrong. If you're like, your game sense is terrible, and game sense is a part of skill level. Right? So you can't say that Dead by Daylight takes no skill, and then we turn around and see that your skill level is absolutely atrocious. And to find out that you have 1,700 combined hours in the game and you still play like you just started playing Survivor, I can't take your opinion seriously. So yeah, I believe Dead by Daylight takes a lot of skill. I believe that there's far more skill than even I'm aware of, right? There's far more to the game that, I mean, like, here's the thing. I want you guys to do me a favor. There was a video by Super Alf where he said, can you guess how many hours people have in the game? And if you watch that video and listen to Otts in that video, listen to how much small shit Otts picks up on. The difference in game sense and skill level between a lot of us and the high tier players is insane. There is so much micro and macro managing in this game that it is impossible to say it doesn't take skill. But that's the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, I'm really hoping to have that info perks video out, but it's just taking me so long to write the script. So hopefully it comes very soon. But as always, a special thank you to my channel members, Cinegrim, The Cannibal Main, Alex Balex, Tabasco Raccoon, Ryan Gesture, Spirit Upgrades, and Nuclear Bomb. If you guys are interested in getting special thank yous at the end of videos, as well as additional perks like seeing videos early, make sure you click that join button down below to figure out how you can become a channel member today. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow.